Is it recording? Yes, it is. All right. Well, hello again, everybody. Uh, Firstly, I would like to say that this is going to be a little bit different from our normal. It has nothing to do with video gaming. Uh, this is about a tabletop RPG that I'm making. I know this is a little bit different. It came out of left field, right? Let me explain, right? I figured that since this is something I've been working on and off with random bursts of intense passion and then burnout for a few months, I figured it would be a fun little thing to record my journey through it, my little process. Take you guys with me, document it in some sort of fashion. And that might give me a little bit more passion to work on it. I'll have a bigger audience of people that would like to see this game or something, or see it to the end. Um, so that's the first thing out of the way. I have two other things I would like to mention. I did see my views recently. I haven't checked in on YouTube recently in like a month, I would say, a month or two. And I did not realize I was doing really well over there. So thank you everyone who has given me like 100+ views for my past few episodes. That was a shock and a very welcomed one. I promise I'm working on the next night. I just keep throwing myself at it and it doesn't work, and then I'm like, I don't have too much time to work on as well. Brings me to point three. I now have an actual job because I can't yet rely on YouTube to pay bills and stuff. So until that day happens, until I've gotten a big enough community of my loving devoted fans who are able to help me live off of it, I gotta take up another job in the meantime. That being said, thank you for tuning into this one, and let's hop into this. So, what is my? I don't have a name for it. I'm gonna be real. It's still just called Space RPG for the moment, and this isn't like official. Like, I'm not making this as of now. I'm not making this as a product to like sell or anything, like put on shelves or your local game store. I'm just writing down a bunch of rules that come into my head for this game that like I want to make playable for my family and friends and anyone I give access to this, anyone that I share this to, which is now, whoever sees this video, but they'll have to go and watch through different videos and stuff. And so, I have access to just give it the whole file folder to somebody. Point is, this isn't fleshed out yet, and it is a work in progress. So it's kind of like a my eyes only situation for now, and that's why it's going to look very rough draft. That being said, it is a playable rough draft. Quotation marks around that. Um, One other thing. So it's, as you can see, it's just called Space RPG game. I combine, find a little combined. VPTU 2017. What that means specifically for anyone wondering, that's version playtest up up update upgrade. So this is the second version, 0 playtest, 17 updates, right? So think of like D&D, which this is going to be heavily inspired from, like just the system. This is the second edition. I haven't gotten around to doing playtesting on it because I wanted to flesh out all of the different mechanics in the game first to a playable level and then throw players in it and then, just mess around with stats and stuff to see what makes everything cohesive. Because if I make one unit at a time really well, but it doesn't work with anything else, I want everything to be at the same level and then kind of mess around with settings, see what it works. But so yeah, I've done 17 different updates, come back twos and rearranges just to like balance changes. And yeah, how can you balance it if you don't know if it even works? But you just kind of crunch numbers in a calculator and hope for the best. So the origins of this, right? It goes back a while. Like I would say 10 plus years, maybe 13 ish. Um, and very shamelessly, it was basically just a rip off of Borderlands 2. I called it Year 3000, and it had nothing in common with this game. But that is the like start of this, right? I had this grand idea in my brain of like, hey friends, I got an idea. When we, get all big and have money and stuff, we're gonna make a video game. And it was in my mind just Borderlands 2. So that went nowhere, clearly, and it's irrelevant. But that is where the roots of this sci-fi project took place in. Some years later, my uncle, uh, he was describing because he's really big into tabletop RPGs, and he's been helping me out a lot with this, and I cannot thank him enough for it. But he was telling me a story of how him and his friends had to calculate like ricochet chance off hitting a dumpster and stuff, and that blew my mind because at that time, a little kid who's just barely playing Dungeons and Dragons, I didn't even know that there's ricochet. Like you could even think about mechanics that complex for well, in my mind was just running around and smacking some goblins around with a club. So I immediately like took out a giant piece of paper, drew a spaceship on it, and like in a back alley and a dumpster, and I'm like, okay, this is going places. This is gonna be something really cool. I don't know why I didn't ask him like what game he played or whatever. I just that part skipped my mind, and I just went to make my own game from that. But I was it felt very different. I want to say it felt more like a hero shooter, right? Like say something like Overwatch, probably more so Paladins or Battleborn, because that's what I was really inspired from and took akin to. But just those three kind of meshed into one with a lot more of the sci-fi compared to the other two. And a Titanfall was another part, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, just kind of that feeling of games. I know that's a big, broad category, but those hero shooters and then just kind of that sci-fi military element, and that was where my brain was. That's what I wanted this game to be. And there's all these classes and subclasses you could choose from, and I did not have the good people to test that on first. Everyone just kind of looked at it and go, "What is this? What are we even looking at here?" Because I'm a little kid who doesn't even know the rules of Dungeons and Dragons, trying to make my own more complicated version, and that went nowhere. And then comes, I would say, just a few years ago, like five, oh no, probably like six now. 6 years ago, I actually had a process. Like, okay, I've played some games now. I know what things actually work and how mechanics work in games. And I started making better rules. And the first one I came across, the first one, I'm like, you know what? I want this to be simplified down to its most base level because I want it to be very low skill floor, very high skill ceiling sort of thing. That way, it's adaptable, like you can get new people into it and make them feel comfortable, not overwhelmed, but the grand scale and like scope of it, like a lot of more veterans would be able to get into. I'm like, that's a good concept, that's a good idea. Because you'll have a Dungeons and Dragons game, and that's very, I want to say, like linear, right? It's level one, two, three, fighter, sub fighter class, and you know what the skeleton's going to do. It's going to come at you with its sword and shield and go, rah, rattle these bones. I wanted this one to be a lot more sandbox feeling, a lot more anything can happen at any moment. And space helps out with a lot for that because you have no idea what to expect there, especially if I introduce and make up all my own aliens. You know, there could be a skeleton looking thing, and you might think it's that. It can very well not be. So the first thing I did is I got rid of classes entirely. None of that. Now, that's not to say there isn't like a focus, you know? Like if you have four people, one of them can be your hacker, one of them can be your fighter, one of them can be your Jedi, and one of them can be like your I don't know, your pet take care, you know, is oh, I'm taming all the aliens. And that's totally okay. That's kind of how it's ideally meant to be played. Or you can have everyone just be really good at everything but great at nothing. It's fluid, you know? You can scale your character to how you wish to see it. That way you're not stuck just being the fighter with the sword. You can have a little bit more customization and actual feeling to it. So, all that introduction out of the way, I think what I'm going to do is just go topic by topic and make videos on each chapter. Chapter 1 is going to be, well, very quick, so I might just make it chapter 1 and 2 for the sake of flushing out the video, because here's all of chapter 1. So, this is just a quick overview and a very long version of what I said. I'll try maybe mentioning where I get inspiration for some mechanics or ideas of things in the game. But basically, this is just one gigantic love letter to sci-fi topic genre in general. This isn't going to be like just cyberpunk or just Star Trek or just fill in blank space topic genre. This is just kind of overall combining and taking bits and pieces from every media out there and just my headset died because there wasn't any audio going to it. So it was like, okay, I'm gonna go to sleep now. Uh, I'm gonna put some music in the background. Hopefully it doesn't pick up, but that way at least something is going on. Alright, we're good. Alright, sorry about that. Very unprofessional of me. Yeah, so anything in red is stuff that I've labeled for myself to come back to and touch up on. And this is kind of a guide. Key, what's... I forgot the name of it off the top of my head. This is just kind of a little guide, little label. So like this would be like rifle, and then it has a little description of it if it needs it, and then the stats of whatever is there. And then I try to make it obvious whenever there's a new item, new subject or something, and we'll have a noticeable enough break. Sometimes due to just page formatting, it's not clear. So I think that's all for the overview of chapter 1 for now. So chapter 2 is the character creation phase. Now, there are going to be more races eventually. This is just a quick list of types of things. So, in my game, there are 3 different stats: your body, your mind, and your soul. And these are encompassing. Like, if you do body, that's your dexterity, that's your constitution, and that's your strength. They're condensed versions of all of those. So, if you need to roll something, it's a very generalized stat. Now, that does make it very like strange. It makes it in a weird balancing spot because strength and dexterity and charisma. You could use charisma for your constitution. You could use it for like soul and mind, but like having it such an umbrella category kind of makes it feel as if like you only put points in your body, then you're unkillable. But due to this sort of like triangle system of counters balances that if you overdo in one, then you're not really like a single mind flayer could run by and you're completely useless because you can't defend against psychic attacks or magical or having a hacker just disable your breathing. So they're generalized, they're simplified, but you do want to balance them out to actually have the best overall balancing. So all of them start at 1. You can't go below 1, that's death, so your character will have a baseline of 1 in each of their stats. That's just a free plus 3 points, basically. From there, there's a fixed 12 points. As you can see, this is where the Dungeons & Dragons thing comes in, of rolling of the stat spreads. And you can take those 12 points and divvy them up between them. You could put 4 in each, 6 in one, and 3 in the others. I don't really... However you want to divvy that up. Or you can roll a flat-out d20. That means you could get a d1 or a 20. Not a d1. You could get 1 or 20, and that's what you have to go with. And I'll add text here, but depending on if your DM allows mercy rolling or not, that could be what you're stuck with. So it's, do you want the plus 8 points and make your character a little bit stronger, or risk it all and not get anything? The order you choose to build doesn't really matter, just so long as all these steps are met, that's the goal. So these are the normal size. These are within human sized variations with about 4 to 7 feet tall. Now I know that is way below and way above normal humans, but there's also aliens to take into account. So anything larger or smaller than that gets separated into a different size category. So here are the humans, you know. Everyone kind of knows what a human looks like. We don't really need to go over that. Here's a bit of the lore. It's just a small thing because humans are kind of the main race, as that's, well, we're human. So most likely that's what the story will be based around. That's not saying I'm not going to flesh out other parts of it. Just, if you want to read over that, here you go. That's not like crucial to the game. But basically, I'll go over it. I changed my mind. We were us. Like, it's not alternate history until in the future. We managed to colonize the moon and Mars and eventually the whole solar system. But once we get into this this interplanetary civil war between what is now humans, Terrans, Earthlings, and the Martians, we and it sounds very unlike how would there be a fair civil war between that, but it is a built-up Martian base with the support of the other planets versus a weakened Earth, because right before this, Earth had a robot rebellion that severely damaged its military capacity. So after our civil war, a bunch of aliens we called the Lunarians, because we met them on the moon and assumed they were there. Once we figured out how to do speech, how to learn each other's languages, we learned that's not their name, but it kind of stuck, and so they're called the Lunarians. But they introduced us into better space technology and allowed us to move out of our solar system and colonize other planets. We joined into a galactic civil war that basically put us on the front stage, and from there on, humans did what they do best, you know. So here's their stats. They get a +2 in mind, body, and soul. Very average. I tried making +6 the like baseline stat, right? Just +1, -1 in each one of those main body parts, and that's kind of the gist. Now, originally they didn't have any abilities, but with all of the new things that I've added to since I've added humans, they felt so boring. They felt just way too unplayable compared to everything else, because it's like if you pick them, you don't get anything. And I do want my players to expand their options. I want them to look at it and go, okay, humans, what's on the next page? Whoa, all these cool aliens, and want them to try out the new things. That being said, I do know that humans are the most picked race because that is a comfort zone. They know what to expect from there. But I don't want to punish new players or people that are looking for something safe when everything else outscales them. So I added some abilities, and I might dull them down. I might change them. Of course, like I said, I'll need to playtest this more. So essentially, they get, and none of these things are unique to a human, right? Every living thing in this probably has adrenaline. Everything is able to resist damage to some degree, and everything has a will, right? It's just that humans in the lore of creation stuff and like Forerunner, alien technology, whatever we want to say, they are the ones that make the most use of it. They're the ones that abuse their natural base abilities like that the best. So, very simple, but not overdone, I think. So the robots, they're very much in the sort of Omnic look from Overwatch, I would say. Maybe a bit more human. So very utilitarian, skeletal looking rather than overly complex in designs. Now, some of them do have metal or plastic casings on them to appear human, maybe some silicone, but overall, they don't have any organics on them, and that comes in later. So, eventually, the robots did become self conscious, they became human. They began to think and feel for themselves and were tired of being tools, of being just machines. And whether it be from an evil AI overlord or a robot populace uprising, they did manage to collectivize and go to war with humanity. They lost the war, but concessions were given out to keep them alive because genociding all robots wasn't in the humans' interest. So, well, there was a lot of, restrictions on what they could do, and thus, because of that, modifying yourself as a robot now comes at a cost because I did make them extremely tanky. They get, instead of health points, whenever you put a point into your body, that is a +1 health to each of your limbs in the game. So instead of that, they get armor, which is almost double the amount of health and gives a damage reduction. So they're very tanky, but now you're running around looking for parts and having to run from the law if you're illegally upgrading yourself. So I feel like that's a nice little balance. So upgrades, they're able to just slap stuff on them, rip off an arm, doesn't even bother. Lunarians, yeah, I gotta revisit them because they're very entwined with the magic. Now, it does kind of break the rule that I said no classes, and if you pick this, you're picking it because they're good at magic and you're going to make a mage. That's not to say you can only use them for that, but they get a lot more benefit out of using that. So I'm not going to go over them right now because of this, but basically think of the little gray man or maybe a xenomorph, mix the two together. That's kind of how they look. So they got a +1 body, +2 in mind, +3 in soul. In this game, soul dictates all your magic stuff. Hacking is your mind. Bugmen. These are inspired from Halo, the Covenant, the elites in that. That's kind of how I wanted them to be originally. And then I swapped them into purely bug people. So not so much of that in between humanoid slug look with armor, like just straight up, these are gigantic cockroaches and ants looking at you. So that's, the boiled down version of their appearance. they are a hive mind. So naturally, they have hive mind intelligence, but some of them are born or granted with self thinking, though the queen can still read their thoughts or interpret their mind. Their queen is essentially a god. She can communicate with them across the galaxy. Now, I might put a limit or reach on how far that can go, but she's powerful. And she understands that she's kind of trapped, right? Because if she plays her cards too clearly, the rest of the galaxy will realize that she's just there to consume all biomass. But she's smart enough to go, okay, well, we're just going to eat all the worlds you're not using because you see it as trash or something, and we won't be in your way. But really, she's just biding her time in building up a massive army to go on a galactic invasion and just eat everything. So, with the bug people, obviously Bugman's not going to be their name. I'll give them something, but that's still probably what they're going to be called, knowing how we are. We're going to be like, oh, you Bugmen. So, as them, you're able to evolve. You're capable of growing new body parts if you want, like wings or venom spitting glands. Just like the robots, you're able to actually choose to grow your exoskeleton or your interior. Now, there is a reason why you might want one or the other, because damage types such as poison and fire are actually unique and have different effects. So, we'll get into that very farther down the line. Wunkin, shamelessly just a Wookiee, let's be real. Giant ape, think of how a Wookiee would look, but, a little bit more colorful. So they were actually the first to get into space in this universe. However, they couldn't maintain that and nuke themselves back to the Stone Age. And because of that, all of the pets they kept rose up and then enslaved them. So that's their quick end of it lore. I pressed space, I think. Okay, yeah, I did by accident. Anyway, so that's their lore super summed up. I think they're in a fun place because currently in the galaxy they're sort of in this guerrilla warfare that's spreading on their giant jungle home planet versus basically Ewoks versus the Empire, except Wookiees versus the Empire. So if you want to throw in players on that, that's kind of the setting for that. And it's in a bombed out like mega cities, but all the forest is overtaken and grown it. So you could hide inside ruined structures and stuff, and then go out, take one step, and there's a redwood tree right there. So with them, super buff dudes, they got a 5 in body. Uh, when in melee, they get to roll additional dice, but they get exhausted for doing it. We'll get into the exhaustion stuff later, but think of it as a stacking penalty to anything you do. Ratkin. So following right up after the Wookiees, the Ratkin are what they enslaved. These guys are very much inspired from Skaven, and I like the Skaven. They're funny little dudes, and a clan of spacefaring rats just seemed right. So, just a rat. It's just a rat. It's a big rat. There's nothing unique about it. It's not like, they got 40 eyes or something. Uh, the lore I just said, just the opposite. They're running around Earth, they're running around space, being the pirates and the raider type people. Completely just eviscerating spaceships, going in, cleaning out any and all food, and just scrapping it, taking your parts, your guns, and adding it to theirs. So they get very low points. However, you're able to grow them. So they're kind of like in this. You can be small, medium, or big rat if you want, depending on how you want to play them. So because of that, they only get a +1 and everything, and then a +3 wherever else you want. So if you want them to be really strong, smart, or whatever. So when you eat food, you get a little bit bigger, a little bit healthier. And yes, I do have a. It's not set in stone yet, but there is like survival. You do need to eat and drink, so your characters actually do need to go to that bar. They actually do need to rent hotels or put up a tent, and they actually need to take care of themselves and not just murder hobo their way across the galaxy. Obviously, they still can, but they need to actually put thought into it. So it's just going over their size stuff. Nothing special there. Their ability, all fours, because they can basically run on all four of their hands, their feet, because they're just rats. They get super big movement speed bonus. They can and dodging, because like when you're prone, I made it so that way when you're laying on your stomach and stuff, you have an increased chance to not get hit because you're a smaller target. So when they do that, they're technically in that state, and they get the bonuses of it without any of the negatives. Uh, these guys. Okay, hold on. I lied a bit. Remember the Bugmen? That was the original idea of them, was to be the Covenant, and it didn't follow through. They became more Tyranid. The Gassians are the Covenant. Like, this is very much Covenant base. So, uh, essentially, they were super like smart people. Like their whole thing was, we need to uncover the secrets of the galaxy, and their upper leadership abused that search for intelligence and very much forced their own intelligence and created this giant cult around them, keeping them trapped but still progressing in a way. I'll go over that more once I fully flesh out the lore. This is just giving some small things. But they believe that they foresaw that humans would be a threat to them. They would destroy their way of life. And so they tried declaring war on the humans early on to stamp them out. That didn't work out, and they got stamped out instead, and the prophecy came true. So you can play as, and once the war was over, a lot of them sort of like, oh well, we don't need to follow this tyrannical dictatorship anymore. We're just gonna go and leave. So if you're playing them as a cultist, this is how you get them. If you're playing them as the free spirits, bam, or vice versa. That's the idea. Um, I do need to come back to this, but they get increased hacking. They get a little bit increased hacking ability there. And they're able to fit in areas that small sized characters can fit into as a normal one. So that's how they play. Daemonites, basically these are supposed to be like tieflings, right? Or the charismatic style of tiefling. So their skin, they got horns for hair basically. All their hair just kind of hardens into a horn-like structure. And then their whole thing is that they're just super pacifist and peaceful because they can't really tell a lie. Well, they can. What happens is that their skin color changes based on how they feel or what they think. So you can't really lie to someone because you're just exposing yourself through your skin. That does mean though that whenever you tell the truth, you get super high advantage on it because you're telling the truth and people can see it very plainly. That's not to say you can't trick your own body into that. It's just you now have to roll harder to actually lie. Um, so yeah, they were just like, hey, we're here chilling out in the galaxy. Come hang out with us type people. Uh, the Slugi. I think I actually have a. No, I don't. I thought I had a how to pronounce it, but it's Sluggy. They're kind of Jabba the Hutts of the galaxy. They're big slug people, and they're mafia men. They're mafia men, technocrats, capitalists, smugglers. Their whole thing is we like money and exploiting anything and everything we can to get more money. Um, but with that as well, they did grow up on this like super kind of caustic style world, making them so they're, all the elemental damage is reduced to them. So like their fire damage, they don't get hurt as much. They don't get hurt as much as acid. And when they find money, they're able to multiply that money by the player's level. That sounds a little broken, and I probably will come back to it. But the original one was like you get 2+ coins, so it wasn't like a whole lot. Skedry and Doodry, I do have them combined since their lore is their whole thing is very much entwined. And if I put the Doodry just like that, there it wouldn't take up much space. Um, they're in a permanent like World War I scenario of their Earth, their planet. One is supposed to be a sort of monkey man. The Skedry is like lizard people. You know, when they're like, oh, this person's a lizard person. You know, it just shows an image and it's like an upright gecko. That's unironically how they look. Think I don't remember what they're called. The Skeksis, I think. No, that's the crow people, the vulture people from Dark Crystal. Uh, I I'll have to look up the name, but think of Land of the Lost and the lizard people from that. That's how they're kind of supposed to look. A little cartoony, a little silly, but you know, that's a nice little nod to old classic sci-fi stuff, I feel. So that's how they look. Doodry are monkey men, except like Mad Max monkey. So they're super patchy, kind of more pig-like as well. Maybe like Trailer Park Bigfoot might be a good sort of mental image. But yeah, these two are stuck in a global wide world war. Like there's a trench that goes from north to south pole basically, and they constantly are just back and forth. The environment's almost completely a desert from how much they've destroyed their world, and that's where that's their whole thing. And they were stuck in a sort of, I would say, medieval era for a good long while because they couldn't really progress past that. They went through all the stages, you know, bronze, iron, uh, Roman, imperial era. They went through all the different levels, and they hit the Dark Ages and kind of got stuck there because they couldn't progress that because they were stuck in this constant war. And then all the other aliens like, don't go to that planet, not worth your time wasting there. Humans being humans went there and like, yo, we see your war and we can help out. You want some guns? And that's where they're at now. That's where they're at a world war. They got trash tanks that some random company scrape together to sell for a few bucks. They just whatever they can scrape together is how their world looks. However they can just abuse it. So Skedry, they get night vision and physical damage. It gets reduced because of their scaly hides. The Doodry, they get fire damage reduced by half. They're fireproof. And when on fire, they can move now as a bonus. So they get a whole bunch of actual actions. And they get advantage on their melee. Advantage, and as we all know, D&D, it's, you know, you roll uh, the two dice since you to choose the bigger one. In this one, it was that originally, And I felt that was too similar. So advantage is now you roll your normal dice, right? But you get a bunch of additional d4s alongside it. So you can roll that, and then you roll a plethora of advantages because that feels more advantagey. It's all these stacking little bonuses to help you overcome something rather than, oh, I felt lucky and got a bigger number. So that's the mutant. The mutant isn't any single class or race, right? It is either, the behemoth monstrous creature. It could be your Fallout super mutants, where they're just a human that's green. They some lab grown creature thing, but there's just supposed to be that monstrosity. And to symbolize this, I gave them a +8 to their body, but 0 nothing else, because that's kind of their whole thing is being this creature. They get disadvantage on charisma checks because they're so monstrous. And whenever you level up, you can get a mutant mod instead of any stats. Whenever you level it up, you get a +1 in whatever you want or whatever. So instead, you can get a. Where'd it go? You can get a +1 in a plus mutant mod instead. And if you want, you can actually take a variant from any of the previous races, any of the previous aliens, and modify them into a mutant because that makes total sense for it to be a mutant. That's a variant of a creature. So you just take whatever their stats are, reduce them to 1, and take those and add them to the body, basically. It's not, I don't think it's as much in comparison, but you do get the special abilities that they add. So if you want to do a human, you get all those human things, the mutant mod, and a bunch more into your body now. It's only going to be +2 to your body now. So you'll have a +4 total, but you get a whole bunch of other stuff. So that also means you get the disadvantage, though. Up to you. The Voidborn. So these are now, I think, super into the alien zones. These are very Slenderman looking people. We'll just simplify it. Kind of very Slenderman. Tall, gaunt, inky black skin, forgotten face. The Void, it is where everything that is forgotten goes. Like a building that's forgotten about, that's where it goes. An island that goes uncharted for years, it goes there. Anything that is completely forgotten about, invisible, unknown to anything in the universe, it goes there. Now, obviously, it can't just consume everything in blink of an eye because then there's a lot of stuff that would go. So it kind of just picks and pulls at when it wants. But so yeah, Lost Voyages, ships, people, that's where they go to. And you can't escape from there, but you get changed. You become that creature. You lose your mind, your memory, and you come out a different thing entirely. So that's what the Voidborn are. They were a something at one point, but it's not that anymore. So you get 4 stats to put wherever you want. Now it is less, but they do get a lot of stuff in return. So there's ailments in this game. Okay, so sanity, exhaustion, and panic. Exhaustion affects your body. It affects your body stats. So the more exhaustion you have, the lower it'll be, the lower your skill checks in that area will be, and it hampers your movement ability and stuff like that. Sanity goes for your mind, I believe, and it affects your ability to hack your ability to think, process things. It just overwhelms you, and panic does your soul. It makes it so you can't be as empathetic or caring or vocal or spell casting. You can't be human. And so once all of these come together and they start just tearing you down so much, they can actually kill you. These are secondary stats that can kill you. And if they lower you to a point, that's it. Like, if you lose all your mind to sanity, you're insane. And you can't be helped. So the voids are able to transfer those ailments onto enemies. Whenever they land that natural crit, they can move them. They're able to do damage for those ailments, and they're able to remove them easier. So wrong wording, but same idea. And then reach into the void. So kind of like Bugmen and the mutants, they're able to modify them, and they literally just step out. They can even step out of combat just into this pocket dimension, level up there essentially, step out. So if you need to, like, say you're not equipped for something in combat, you can literally go in there, evolve yourself in a way, change your physical being to combat the threat better, step back out, and shadow teleport across the map to an enemy now. It comes at a cost. We'll get to that later on, but like, because you're stepping back into this realm of nothingness, of decay, and it doesn't help. So now we're on to the big guys. I think we have enough time. I'll need to cut some stuff out maybe, but I'll do all the characters. I'll do all the big ones and small ones because there's not as many. So I will probably make it so when you're playing a big character, you have to eat more, drink more, and armor will cost more. I feel like it's a fair compromise. As of now, though, there's not like rules for clothing. They're not like, oh, you need to go find a big size XX large shirt, So you get increased carry weight. However, you are easier to hit because you're bigger. You do more damage, stuff like that, because you're big. The Dawnbringers are essentially dwarfs, and I know it sounds silly putting them in the big, but you're now a 10-foot tall dwarf. You got iron flowing through your veins. Your skin grows iron scales. You're a big dude. You like smithing really strong, powerful weapons. And they live on a planet-sized spaceship that's constantly growing. They try to stay out of war, but they do profit from it. And that's kind of their whole thing, is they just travel the galaxy. Their whole thing is progress and building and crafting and making a giant citadel, a gigantic spaceship. So they get a little bit more. I tried making kind of like 8 stats now for all of them because I felt like that's a good for being bigger. You get +3 to crafting. Your base health is armor. I don't think we've come across this yet, but base health. So it is limb-based health. I got it from MechWarrior, I believe, is where that idea for the specific way the health works in this. Whenever you put a point into your body, you put it into each of your body parts. So if they have 4, that means they have 4 health to each of their limbs. 5 because you can't start with less than 1. And that means their first 3 hit points of health, or last 3 rather, is armor. And that makes it, once you lose your health, you then become super tanky and harder to kill. That way you can back out of bad situations. That's the idea with that. You can eat metal to actually heal armor if you want, and lowers the required amount for critical hits in melee. So 18 now can crit an enemy. Grotons, these are bigger Wookiees. They're more pig-like and gorilla, but that's their whole thing is that they are just really big Wookiees related to the Wunkin. So they do only get a plus 6 in their body. However, they get a lot of stuff. So their head has base armor of 4. So really hard to get headshots on them, essentially. And if you're from behind them, you cannot hit their head at all. It's impossible to hit the head. I guess if you're up high enough, and I'll need to put specialized rules for specifically being up so high, but it's at the point where you're standing above them to hit their head. When you're landing, it still hits. Carrying weight is doubled, and they're climbing. They get an additional 2 spaces of movement. So they're interesting class because it's not specifically melee. Because they do have melee, right? Melee attacks have double body bonus damage to them, to enemies. But you're a very sort of mobile tank, melee tank now. That's why I gave him a little bit less in body. Because if you're abusing your climbing speed a lot, then I feel like that helps balance out. And the ancients, tree people, basically just Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. So they're giant tree people. Imagine a tree, except with arms. So their home planet is a massive, naturally occurring computer. Like all the ore lined up in a way to send electrical currents. The processing was just right. Water course over its veins to keep it cool. Like, it's a massive, naturally forming computer in a way. And it managed with just that gigantic of a force, managed to manipulate itself. So it created these things from its own living body in a way. And because of that, they are just tree people. They eat less food than any other race their size would. When exposed to sun, they're able to heal +1 at the end of their turn. So that's kind of what I wanted from all the big people, is that they're supposed to be your tanks. Again, I didn't want classes in the game in the same way as others. And you can play them not as this, it's just a bonus for being a big guy. So they're able to heal at the end of the turn. Granted, it's not a lot. I might make it based off their level or something. Maybe half their level rounded down. We'll see. Disabled if they're on fire, because, trees are pretty weak to that. High exposure, so like say if you were in really bright sunlight, out in space, just staring at a sun, you get doubled that health healing bonus. You're able to communicate to any real plant life. You can just straight up just talk to grass and they'll tell you how their day's been. Every 10 points in your body, you get bonus armor at that stage, so you'll go in between these spurts of having a bunch of health, and then having armor, and then having a bunch of health. That way, when in combat and you get reduced down to that, you get to this tanky part, and you're able to heal that health back up before they chew through your armor. That's kind of the idea of how that was supposed to balance out. And the new health will be placed over the armor. That way they can't kill the armor because you'll constantly regenerating that health. And the armor is destroyed once it's gone, though. You can't regenerate that until you put more points in your body. Fire damage is reduced when hitting the armor, so it's reduced even more now. So yeah, that's how they are. That's all 3 of the big guys. Now on to the small ones. They get increased movement, reduced to being hit, and dexterity actions. Anything that's dex based is now increased. Your carry weight is halved though, so you can't pick up big guns. It'd be funny, and I totally love and want someone to do that. You know, be Rocky Raccoon with a jetpack and a big minigun. Put some points in the body, and you totally can do that. So the Greebies, um, uh, to anyone who has seen Men in Black, you know those pervy aliens that are just sitting in the break room drinking coffee all day. Think of that. That's essentially how a Greeby looks. Like I said, I wanted these to be a bunch of inspired from different sci-fi things, and I just thought those guys, they never made a comeback into anything. You've never seen another one of those in any other media. The little rat, I don't even know how to describe them. A worm, the little worm guys. You know, there's nothing really like them. Um, and the idea of, you know, you flip through the player's handbook and it's like, okay, how do I make a race like this? Not necessarily this race, but how do I get something to fill this sort of role in the galaxy? And my idea for them was very goblin-esque, but like a, I don't know, a modern fantasy where, like, you know, all right, well, races are races and integrate it into society. And I don't know, maybe the goblins probably would still be gobbling it up. You know, they're stealing, they're pickpocketing, they're looting. That was kind of the idea for this. So they're cockroaches of the universe. They're little bums, and their homeworld was essentially the same as the Sluggies, just different planet. Constant just pools of acid hanging around, so they're super resilient to all damage. Flat out -1 reduction to any incoming damage, and it scales with their character level. And when rolling to resist elements, you can double your base stats for defense. That being said, they get nothing. They get no bonuses to, well, they get +1s to everything, but still, that's so little. And their whole thing was they're just a bunch of little, they're essentially animals until a spaceship landed down on their planet, saw it was trash and dipped, but before it could, it accidentally picked up a couple of them. They went out into the galaxy and they just expanded. They go around just eating copper cables and just eating out of your trash cans. You'll just find like a little pack of them. So if you want to play the little, just a little roach just hanging around the crew's spaceship going through their trash, this is your character. You know, if you want to be that rogue or that bard that's just the pest of the group, I here's your character. Here's the perfect setup. You could do this with anyone, but here's the perfect setup. Mankrins, last one of the Wunkin family tree. We had the gorillas, we had the humanoids. These are essentially the is it rhesus macaque? You know, the little guys with the little flat face and the long tail. That's essentially how they are. They're little prankers, little like kids of in their world, in their place. So again, if you want to play a little rat character, here you go. So very sneaky. They're also that great climbers. They get no penalty when climbing. There are penalties for climbing because it's not a normal activity for anything to do. You can't just scale a wall. These guys, no penalty. They can climb that like it was nothing. So if you want to throw a sniper rifle on this guy, get in a really good position, advantageous position, that's not a bad idea for these guys. No. Same thing with the rats. The ratkin, crouching doesn't give them any penalties. And their tail can actually be used as an extra arm, so you could run in with 3 pistols or 2 pistols and a knife or something. It can only hold a small object, though, not like, you know, 3 miniguns. You're going to be carrying just a knife, pocket knife or something. And that is it for now. Next time we'll go over a couple other things, but thank you guys for checking this one out. I don't know if how many of these I'll post. I'll go ahead and do my whole entire booklet. It is a couple of pages though. We got 85 of these things to go through. We did get through an eighth of it. Maybe a little bit more, like or a little bit less, like a six, maybe. But yeah, you know, this is a fun little thing that I've been working on in the background on and off for the past. I would say this version. I would say the past year, because I had it when I really started working on it back early of last year, and then fell off, picked it back up, fell off again. There's just something about staring at this white screen for hours trying to come up with numbers in your head that you don't know if they even work or not because you don't really have too many time or people to test this out on, right? If you had a group of friends just on hand and just could at any moment play a game, because it's hard enough to play, get everyone together for a game of Dungeons and Dragons, but to get everyone together and play a game that doesn't even exist is a little bit harder to convince them when your schedules as well could be completely different. But thank you guys for showing up for this episode. And if you liked it, let me know. If you guys have suggestions, because please, I am super open to making this good. I want to actually make this really fun and good. I want it to be this sandbox where you can create this character that you've always wanted to play but never had the ability to, and just throw him into space and have an adventure with. So let me know what you guys think. If you have friends that are into this, go ahead and show them. That would be a lot. That'd be way more useful. Yeah. Till then, see you guys later, and expect the that other FNAF episode to come out. Sorry that one's taking a little while. All right. Good night, everybody.